This is my experience with the Geimori GU78. Almost a month ago I made a video where I was describing all the features that this grinder has to offer. And after I've been using it for the past days to make my coffees, I can finally share my opinion. Let's start with the grinding settings. The first thing I needed to do, it was to find the real zero in this grinder. Because if I place the dial on 0 and grind the coffee, it won't be fine enough for an espresso shot. So I started to tighten the burrs until I got the real 0, where the burrs started to touch each other. Once I arrived to that point, it started to make this noise. It's normal to have a metallic noise when the burrs are basically close to each other because they are touching, but when they are making this interval noise that you can hear, it means that they are not aligned. So they are not perfect in parallel in between each other. This can create an uneven particle size distribution that we will see later in the video. Also, the dial is very sensitive. The dial feels wobbling, and as you can hear, when I move it, the noise changes. This is not very positive for a grinder because when we talk about distance within burrs, we are talking about microns, a very small distance difference with a very low tolerance. So to grind something with a good quality, we need precision. Aside from this aspect that is really important, I found it very annoying the fact that the 0 is not a 0 and it's not even close to 0 but is around 40. I don't like to start to brew my espresso, I don't know, at 40 and then maybe they pour over at 30. I wish there was a way to move the sign, but there isn't, so I had to do it myself. Now that my grinder was at 0, I started to make some coffee. So I started with espresso. When you grind fine, you can expect some retention. For example, I placed 18 grams in the grinder and I got 16.7 out. Basically 1.3 grams were missing. They remained inside the grinder. They said that I should expect with this version maximum 0.8 grams of retention, but that was 1.3, so it was a bit too much. They tried to improve this to reduce it at maximum 0.5. I topped up with some more beans to reach 18 and then I went to make the espresso. I noticed that the shot was pretty fast for being a coffee ground at 0. I was actually expecting not having coffee at all coming out from the basket because when you grind at 0, the particles should be very fine that the water is not able to pass through. But it was fast. And this probably is because of the misalignment of the burrs, giving me, yes, a lot of fine particles, but also many coarse particles that allows the water to run through the coffee pack pretty fast. And I noticed this also from the taste of the espressos, that they were almost all watery in mouthfeel with a rough sensation. So you got the negative part from the coarse and also from the fine particles. I've done many espresso shots in the past days using from light to dark roast, changing recipes, changing way to brew the coffee, and I have to say that almost all of them were a bit underwhelming. Then I jumped to brew mocha pot. I noticed that when you go from a fine grind size to a coarser one, you start to get some of the coffee that was previously retained inside the grinder. For example, after I found a starting setting for mocha pot that it was at 20, I placed 12 grams of coffee and I got out 14.3 grams. Basically 2.3 grams more than the one I placed. It means that part of this dose that I have for mocha pot comes from a previous grinding. Okay, now if it's at 20, more or less it's going to be the same grind size, but I don't know, maybe I got some particles that were trapped there when I was grinding for espresso. Maybe it was coarser grind size. That will be a mystery. This makes me think about the knocker. The knocker should supposed to help me to get all the dose out after I grind it. You know, like the particles can remain stuck in between the burr set and the shooter. So by knocking it, it should help me to get all the particles out. So to have a pretty low retention. But in this case, it's not helping a lot, because when I get like 2 grams less and I go to use the knocker, nothing is coming out, nothing important is coming out. It means that all the particles are still trapped in the grinder. So I don't really understand what is the function of this knocker. Anyway, I started to brew some mochas, matching the brew time I usually get with other grinders that I use the most. The flow was regular and steady, pretty good. Taste-wise, not so much. I got more or less the same results that I had with espressos, so a weak mouthfeel with a rough sensation. Probably, again, because of this misalignment problem. When I went to brew filter coffee, I noticed this problem even more. The particles were very irregular, and when I went to brew coffee, I was always getting a muddy coffee bed at the end of brewing, no matter the grind size I was using. Usually I was doing between 60 and 80. I noticed a lot of fine particles inside the brewer, but also a lot of builders. So the range of the particle size distribution was very wide. I was getting a better result when I was grinding at lower speed, so 500 RPM. The particles were a bit better distributed. One very strange thing happened when I was grinding at a coarser grind size was this very weird noise. That was very odd. To get a better answer about this particle size distribution for some of the coffees that I brewed for espresso, mocha and filter, I took some samples that then I ran into a coffee particle analyzer. As you can see, for the zero setting, we have a first curve and a second one here, making the classic bimodal mode we are expecting. But then, instead of having the curve going down like it's supposed to do, we have a third curve and also a fourth one here. For this reason, even if the setting is very fine, the espresso shot ran fast and tastes unbalanced. For the mocha pot size at 20, we still have a lot of fine particles below 200 microns. Two main curves here at 300 and 500, and we have a bit of boulders, as you can see from here. At this grind size, in theory, they shouldn't be present. The whole particle size distribution is very wide and a bit irregular, and this is a sign of uneven distribution. This is the particle size distribution at 60 with 1000 RPM. There is a big amount of fine particles that shouldn't be there, and this is why I was getting all the time a muddy coffee bed at the end of brewing. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 curves. First 5 I can say is okay, even if it's not, but it's okay. But the last one at 1200 microns is not good. There are many boulders that can bring astringency and dryness in the cup together with the fine particles. If I grind the coffee at 60 but using 500 RPM, you can see that the distribution is slightly better, more focused in between 550 microns and 1000 microns. I still have many fines and builders here at the end, but definitely better than when I was grinding using 1000 RPM. At 80 is a bit of a mess, many peaks, very bad distributed. You can see many fines and many builders. So I will say that it's impossible to achieve a good cup of coffee with this particle size distribution. When you want to clean the grinder, it's easy to access. Inside, just take out the front piece, unscrew the front part, and you get inside. As you can see, many particles are trapped on the side, increasing retention first of all, and then when you grind coarser, the boulders kind of like wash these particles out, and that's why, for example, when I placed 12 grams in the grinder to grind for mocha, I got 14.3 out. Anyway, after I finished to clean the grinder, I placed all the pieces back together and I noticed that the zero moved. Now it's making a hell of a noise. That is annoying because now all the settings changed. On the positive side, what I like of the grinder is that it is stable and it's robust. It's a really good piece of metal. I don't mind the design. maybe is a bit too big. I like the fact that it has an RPM control, so based on the beans and the brewing method you're using, you can adjust it for the best. I like the plasma generator, the ionizer that reduces the statics, so you make less of a mess on the counter. The problem is that what I'm looking for in a grinder, first of all, is the grinding quality and the consistency. The rest comes in second place. So if the grinding quality is not satisfying, the design, the noise reduction, the RPM control, the plasma and also other features like the RDT lead are meaningless to me. Talking about the RDT lead, I can say that I'm not a fan of this because first of all, I don't really like to use RDT on my beans. I don't like to add water inside the grinder, even if it's a minimal quantity and even if it helps me to improve slightly better the particle size distribution. Second, if the system starts to leak water, you will end up having a lot of water in the grinder without even noticing. Another thing I'm not a fan about is the dosing jar. I think it's too tall and also inside is very dark, so sometimes it's hard to see if there is any coffee left inside, especially if you grind for espresso. Fine particles can remain stuck here on the edge inside on the bottom, and it's also very difficult to clean, and with the time you will have more coffee oils build up on the bottom, so it will be even harder. The grinding experience is not very satisfying, is not good enough from espresso to filter coffee. You can improve the particle size distribution by reducing the RPM, but that's not enough. The fact that the zero is off is not very pleasing to me. I hope they will find a solution to be able to move the sign based on your zero. I thank the Wish team for giving me this grinder, for trying it. They sent it to me for free, but they didn't give me any money. They didn't even pay me for the review, also because the review is not very positive. The idea is good, but I think they need to put some work to improve the grinder, focusing more on the grinding part and less on the cool features that the grinder has to offer. Hopefully this constructive feedback will be helpful to you to understand if this grinder is worth it, and also to wish to understand where they need to improve it before starting the mass production. With this, I would like to hear from you what you think about the grinder, and also what are you looking for in a grinder. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in my next videos, and in the meantime I wish you a wonderful day and delicious coffee. Ciao!